in doing the evaluation questions for Jonathan, we started to go, well, Jonathan doesn't do any of this, but boy, this really applies to our daughter. And so later, as I started watching some Tony Atwood videos and we started reading some books to find out more about, autism and Asperger's, then it clicked in like, our daughter. And then it was like, I think Jeremy too.
Yeah.
So let's go there, Jeremy. What was that like? Tell us about your journey.
My journey was interesting. Likewise, in really trying to advocate for the children, started to see a lot of my quirks in them, and honestly some of the family quirks, and just kind of doing the research of men being diagnosed 4-to-1, a lot of the dominant gene sequencing coming from the male, and it was kind of like, okay, this is starting to come together. And then in talking with some friends and also some clients and just sharing some of my current isms, it got referred to some very, very awesome people to get tested and to receive said diagnosis. And what really kind of set things into motion. And I want to pause and I want to give my wife credit, because she was trying to filter me help the entire time, and I just did not know. Like, I don't know if any other men struggle with this, but I'm a little slow to catch on to things that my wife's trying to tell me. And so when our daughter was going through her process, she would send me videos of, hey, here's this guy from the UK talking about his journey. I think he's fantastic. And I'd be like, I don't know what it has to do with our daughter, but cool, thanks. Right? So she'd send me stuff like that. And it wasn't until really having conversations with other outside individuals that started to put the pieces together, got tested. And when we got the testing scheduled, really digging into the DSM-5 and being like, oh, this is like a calling card to me. Here's a special interest. Yep. If it's not 405 grams, I can't use it as a hockey stick. Like, just all these little quirks. It's like, I just thought I was being thorough with a lot of the things I like. That's really a special interest. And it really just became one of those things where the evidence was insurmountable to quantify myself, and having great professionals doing the test and helping to just sort of say, yep, here's what we test for, and you passed with flying colors. Congratulations, you're a part of the Neurofam.
So you contributed to our blog on the Christian Neurodiverse couple site, and what you mentioned cheat codes, and that the diagnostic actually turned into a cheat code. Tell us what that means.
I cannot be happier since I've got diagnosed. To be honest with you, it's made my marriage better, it's made my parenting better, it's made my relationships better, because what it has for me is it's allowed me to understand why I am the way I am. And I like to look at it now like a Mac versus a PC. Is one better or worse than the other? No. Do they have completely different operating systems? Absolutely. And so having this diagnosis, if I was trying to do a PC thing with a Mac operating system, I can now look back in my past and go, this is why I would get these headaches. This is why I'd be so frustrated. This is why after doing comedy, I would need to walk around for 2 hours in solitude just to let the headaches stop. Or after I'd go public speak, why I would need to just decompress for a couple hours. Or why I feel like I have a time limit when I'm in large groups of people. Like all these things where I just thought that these were residues from being so overweight and not learning how to be social because of what I thought that was growing up. Now going through the lens of being on the spectrum, it just made everything about me align, and it gave me the ability to go, okay, well, if this is the way I am, then to still accomplish these things that I want to accomplish, I just have to take a different path. And so using my kids for an example, to have these honest, authentic conversations, like our son. So our son's super challenging when he is dysregulated. again, they don't teach you this in the parenting books, but like with him, we don't really punish him because he punishes himself. And he'll try to hit himself because he feels he's done wrong. And so a lot of our course correcting with him is calming him down so we can have conversations. It's been so empowering for both of us. We've had so many genuine hugs at the end of conversations because I've been able to say, buddy, you're just a kid learning how to be autistic in this world as a little dude, and I'm just a man trying to learn how to parent you as an autistic father. We're going to learn through this together, but at the end of the day, I love you. I know you love me. We're going to figure this out, but we're going to do it together, and everything's going to be okay. And it feels like having that ability to just talk honestly that they're there, but to some degree, I'm there as well. It allows for this connection that I haven't had before the diagnosis, because then it was just, well, I'm the dad, grumpy discipline. And same with our marriage, no marriage is perfect. We'll have disagreements, but post-diagnosis, I can go, Charity, I love you. I am completely dysregulated right now. If we have any type of conversation, it'll probably escalate. Someone might yell, someone might cry. If I could just have 5 minutes to just get back to regulated, I'm not avoiding this topic. I'm not running from the problem, but right now I can't talk about it. Come back 5 minutes later, the emotions have subsided, and we can have just a genuine conversation of like, well, this is how I saw it, and maybe this is how you saw it. And to give an example of that, so 5-ish. I needed my wife to be home for 5-ish so I could leave to go work. I had to ref an ice hockey game, and the kids were depending on me. I told my wife I needed her home by 5-ish. So 5 happens, nothing. 5:02, really flirting with that ish, nothing happens. 5:05 comes by, and it's like, okay, all right. 5:07 happens, and if you've ever had a job where maybe it's like retail or you had to punch a clock, that 5:07 and below, you get credit for being there at 5. But if you hit 5:08 and you clock in, you're getting credit for 5:15. So as soon as 5:08 hit, my college target brain worked, and I was like, it's 5:08. I'd have been here for 5:15. So now I'm really kind of getting nervous. And so she rolls in at 5:12. 5:12. And I'm like, okay, thanks, gotta go. And she's like, okay, well, I love you. Bye. In at least for my perception, she's like, I have no idea why he's so rash and upset. He said 5-ish. Here I am. It's 5-ish. And like on the way to the rink, I am fuming. I am so just like completely upset because my whole routine is now off by 10 minutes, which doesn't seem like a lot. But when you're there to do a job, you want to do it right. Being on time is part of doing it right. As is customary, I get to the rink. I text her reffing lovies to let her know that I've arrived, and to let her know that she's loved. And I'm sitting there contemplating like, no, you know what? She does not deserve the reffing lovies today. She made me late. This is ridiculous. She needs to learn from her mistake. And as I'm sitting there, I'm reminded of a commercial that I saw between a grandma and a granddaughter, and they're baking. And the grandma's like, hey, I need a smidgen of sugar. Can I have a smidgen of sugar? And the grandkid's like, what's a smidgen? And the grandma's like, a smidgen. And the grandkid had like no idea, because smidgens are different to everyone. I mean, y'all are in the South. A smidgen of sweet tea is way different than a smidgen of sweet tea in the North. Which gave me the reality of saying, well, my ish clearly was different than her ish. Had I said, I need you home by 5, I need to leave by 5, I'm 99.9% sure she'd have been here. But because I didn't communicate properly what ish meant to me, and I projected that on her, and I held her to my standard without asking her or even considering what her standard of ish was, I realized I put us in a very vulnerable situation. And I was angry at her part of the ish, but not my part of the ish. And I realized, well, crap, I'm going to be angry at her part of the ish, and I better be mad at my part of the ish. And honestly, if we're being true root causation people, my lack of defining the ish really caused this. So I gave her a call and I was like, hey, sorry, I've been mad at you for the past half hour. Still don't appreciate that you were late in my mind, but had I done a better job communicating when I completely needed you home by and not leaving it to chance by saying ish, I don't think we'd be in this situation. So I'm genuinely sorry about that. And having the diagnosis allowed me to understand the difference of communicating and processing and understanding from my spot of the neurodiverse to her spot as the neurotypical. And so not having this diagnosis, I probably would have still been angry. I probably would have diffused any blame. I probably would have felt self-righteous and all these things that could be very toxic in a communal relationship. But because I understood I'm different, she's different, if there's a miscommunication, well, I know that I've misunderstood things because of my diversity. I can't hold it against her if maybe she misunderstood something because of her typicality. And it does none of us any good to fight about it, especially if I could come at a place where I admit my wrongdoing in the situation. But I don't believe I would have had that stance or that opinion if not for the diagnosis. So when I say via the blog, via this conversation, that having that diagnosis is the ultimate cheat code, I mean, that really resolved a huge conflict that probably I'd probably make sarcastic jokes about it to today.
Right. And I would have sat baffled.
Right? Like, what's it on? Right? But when I say the diagnosis is an ultimate cheat code, I feel like for a lot of us who struggle, who we've got these quirks and maybe we feel like we're flirting with diversity, whether it's ADHD or autism or what have you, it starts to put some type of quantification and boundaries around the way we feel, which makes them identifiable. And to be able to identify something and to know what that is, to me, is super freeing. It is kind of like the gospel. You know, the gospel is not a book of rules of things you can't do, but it gives you boundaries for your benefits so you know how to operate in the way that God intended. And so when I look at the diagnosis, it's the way my mind works. It's the way my mind processes. Now that I know this, how can I harness it? How can I use it for the betterment? Because I feel like my autism sets me apart from people, and it does so in a lot of good ways. Well, how do we lean into that? But without knowing why there are those differences, then I'm just kind of searching, and I feel like it's time wasted. So that's what I mean when I say to me, it's been life's ultimate cheat code, because now it helps me understand why I am, how I am, and who I am. And it allows me to use that for my benefit rather than a frustrating detriment because I don't know why I am the way I am.
I appreciated so many things you shared in that story. One, taking the 5 minutes, owning that you're dysregulated, taking that time away and coming back. Because that's the number one reason when I'm trying to get couples to take a pause, the wife will say, he's not coming back. If I let him go, he's not coming back. We got to settle this now. So the two parts was you owned, I'm dysregulated, I need the minutes, and you came back. That's huge. That's very huge. And then just looking at the neurotypical, the neurodiverse, we use language different. We define things differently. And so that step back of this ish, although you'd never say smidgen was sugar and tea in the South, but we do like smidgens of things, but it would not be smidgen of sugar, usually, or flour.
Well, what I'm saying is that your smidgen's a lot different than our smidgen.
Yeah, your smidgen's very different. I don't even think smidgen gets defined.
Right.